right, let's jump into it. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks again for attending our episode, I want to say like 14 or 15, and Let's Talk Recruiting, made up of all fellow corporate recruiting practitioners across the country. And by across the country, I do mean that literally this morning we are a bi-coastal presentation today. So our topic for the day is going to be what makes some recruiters better than others. And with us, we have Katherine Amato out of Los Angeles, where I am out of. We have Pam Koenig out of New York City. And Pam, am I saying your last name right?
Yes.
Koenig, gotcha. And Silva out of Washington, D.C. And last but not least, Craig Campbell out of Seattle. So with that said, we've all been in the business for quite a while, and not all recruiters are created equal. We start to see kind of abilities and skills level out, I personally think, with experience in the game, especially if you come from an agency and you have to take on the mindset of corporate recruiting. It's a little bit different of an animal, but they do seem to kind of part ways or run in packs. So with that said, we're going to go through each panelist and kind of bring up an item that you think makes a difference from one recruiter to another. So Katherine, let's sort of jump over to you and see what you have you want to get to today.
Great. Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. So first of all, I'm Katherine Amato, and I have over 25 years of recruiting experience, though I started when I was 5 years old. And I have both on the search or staffing side of recruiting experience, about 15 years, and then 10, 15 years, so that's over 25, but of the corporate recruiting. So I've been on both sides of the fence on that. And currently I work at Guitar Center at the corporate office, and their business I'm a recruitment manager of their business solutions division, which is supporting their AV integration space. So, and one of the areas, and I saw all the people that participated and put in the examples, everyone had great ideas of, it takes a lot of different components that make up a good recruiter. So it's not just one significant thing. So everyone, thank you so much for all your contributions. And one of the areas that I selected to discuss was business acumen. I think that one of the areas that makes a recruiter really stand out is someone that really can get in and really know their business acumen, the industry, the business that they support, or client if you're on the search side. Really get to know your client. And not only just what your client does, but know the industry. Read up on it, continually know the industry. What are the fluctuations? What is the market like? Talk to your candidates. Your candidates will tell you everything about the industry and what's going on. And the reason why you want to know this, you want to know everything about the industry, what's going on, everything about it, is because as you talk to your hiring managers and you get to know the business strategy, what are the short-term, what are the long-term goals, and as you evaluate and talk to candidates, you can help influence decisions. And when you know that certain strategies and things that are going on, and you find a candidate that really excels in a particular area and has really made, you think can make a really strong contribution that it can impact either money or can help save money, and you can present these candidates even if there's not a current opening, or you can see things and help make introduce ideas or things to hiring managers to really be a true business partner. And as the position of a recruiter has evolved, just like in human resource, we're not order takers. We're not, we just don't take a job description and say, okay, I'm going to match this exactly. We've become a real business partner, involved in strategy and, can really make a difference in an organization. You can really make an impact on helping contribute to helping an organization make money or save money, depending on the type of talent that you help bring in. Really make an impact to an organization. So really knowing your business and, the business acumen is so important, and just really knowing everything about it. So keep your thumbprint, your whatever, know your business.
Hey, Katherine, can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah.
So you're Guitar Center, right? Music and retail. So
Right.
am I
Well,
right?
the business that I support is AV integration within Guitar Center. So
Okay.
yes.
So big picture, and I'm not trying to put you in a corner or anything like that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Am I reading retail industry news or Variety magazine, or am I reading both? Or am I way off on that as far as like finding news relevant to my specialty that my company's in? And the reason why I throw this at you, coming from Universal Music, like we all had Rolling Stone and Variety magazine. Then we had to learn about, Apple Music and Spotify and that type of industry outside of how do I recruit better? But it was all related to music and how the music industry made money.
Right. So in my particular case, I watch everything from Wall Street Journal to the business and retail, just to know in the corporate, the music, the retail, but also for my particular areas, AV integration. So I'm involved with Avixa and, the industry specific councils and organizations. I know who all my competitors are, what they're doing, what industry, construction, real estate. So everything that affects AV integration and how that's evolving with IT and networks. And so everything that involves that particular area. So yeah, mine is a bigger pic, it's a lot of pieces. So
Gotcha.
yes.
Does anybody else have anything to comment around that, gaining that industry and business knowledge? Because to your point, Katherine, how you got that deep expertise in that area you're recruiting for, it does come back to me. It's like, okay, I need to talk with the business leaders I support.
Yeah.
They may or may not have that big picture mindset. They're focused on theirs, or they may have everything involved. Krystan?
I have something to add there. Yeah. So I don't have quite as much experience as Katherine does, but I have been a recruiter for 15 years. So here in my career, I was in the staffing agency model. I've hired for call centers. Now I am very, very niche market in the highly technical space, in the government consulting space, needing clearance. 15 years ago, I knew nothing about this world. So understanding that you have to know that you're never going to know it all, but you have to ask the questions so that you can find the right people. So could I still find you the perfect welder? Absolutely. But that's just not my area of specialty anymore. But how did I hire the perfect welder? By talking to somebody who actually welds. I didn't have any family members to rely on. That was very, very new space for me, completely separate from the technical space that was new to me when it was new to me. So building that internal relationship with your hiring team, as well as listening to your candidates. I loved when you said that, Katherine. They're going to tell you everything you need to know about the industry. You don't have to waste time trying to figure it out yourself on Google to have the conversations. Ask open-ended questions and you'll get the answers that you need. And then you can just roll that into your repertoire of communications with future candidates.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're so right on. I mean, you got to question your way to success. Your candidates will educate you and tell you everything you need to know. So right on.
Yeah.
Excellent. Pam, Craig, anything to add on to that?
I liked what Katherine said. I liked what Katherine, did you say Craig or Pam? Sorry.
Pam, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry,
So,
I was just going to say, I liked what Katherine said about creating relationships with business partners and not always, sending a resume for that exact job, but, kind of, which is what the category I was going to talk about next, which is thinking outside of the box. If you think somebody is a good fit or would make a contribution to the organization, to not be shy and send their resume over.
Craig?
Yeah, I know one way that we think about sort of knowledge is kind of industry, business, function, and skill. And so having an awareness across sort of that range is always helpful, because obviously our audiences change, whether it's the candidate, the hiring manager, or whoever you might be speaking with. So that's one way we have often thought about organizing it.
Interesting. Excellent. Pam, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So I wanted to touch upon two different things. And one is, making a good recruiter is thinking outside of the box. I work for an agency now, but I've also worked in-house. When you're given a job that's not an easy fill, something that's going to be a little bit more challenging, to really think outside of the box in terms of the way to attract the right candidates for the job. Or on the flip side, a way to convince, you could say, a hiring manager to still consider that person, even if they don't have every single thing that they're looking for. And we've turned jobs that might start out at $80,000, up to 100, and turn them into $150,000 hires just based on the, what the candidate is able to offer to the client. So, again, going back to what I said before, to not be shy. If a person is worth more money, still send them. What's the worst thing the client can say is, no, I don't have that in my budget. I can't afford that. Or I do need this skill. It's an absolute must. But to always try to be creative in your recruiting and, to think outside the box. And then the other area I want to touch on is candidate relationships. As a recruiter, it's very, very important to have the trust of your candidates. It's, the clients might be the ones paying us, but the candidates are the ones that you need them to fill the jobs. And you want to have a good reputation, that you get back to people, that you let them know what's going on, even if you've got nothing to tell them, that you stay in touch with them. It's really important. Candidates, use the term ghosted these days, and it's a terrible term, and we can play a role in trying to help them with that. So just creating those relationships. I'm still in touch with people that I placed in jobs 20 years ago, who still remember me, and I remember them. And now I've seen them go from a graphic designer to a, chief creative officer. And, just to keep the relationship strong. And again, one thing I said in the last webinar that I did is, it can take me sometimes 2 days to help someone find a job, or 2 years. But in that time, I'm still in touch with them. I haven't forgotten about them. I tell them to feel free to check in with me anytime. So strong candidate relationships also make for a good recruiter.
Pam, do you got any tricks around maintaining that long-term relationship when everybody's busy? And by that, I just mean staying in touch, keeping track of somebody. Just like an example from me would be like, for those high priority people, if I have LinkedIn, they're in kind of a folder. I kind of track the changes of job titles or something like that, to try and just maintain when something changes in their life, so I can send that congratulatory email. I've been tinkering around with trying to know when somebody posts that I've been trying to stay in touch with, so I can comment on it in some way. Just that light touch, but ongoing. Any tricks or anything?
Look, I'll use my calendar and I'll put things on there, to remind myself. But I'm also honest when I say to people, feel free to check in with me. I can't, none of us are capable of checking in with hundreds of people all the time to let them know they're still on our radar. We don't have anything. I mean, everyone's just too busy for that. But I will always get back to someone if they reach out to me, and I'm honest with people about that. reach out to me anytime, that you want. But in terms of trying to remember an anniversary or something, I mean, my calendar.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
And anybody else around the outside the box thinking around candidate relationships and things like that? And do we all sort of, Craig, I think you're the one who gave me this idea or the concept years ago, the whole red velvet rope treatment, keeping track and just those high priority people.
Yeah, I think at the time we were discussing that, I was working for MGM Mirage in Vegas. And one of the things I learned, and we do this whole sort of functional tour when you come on to the organization, and I spent time with individuals who manage relationships with the different tiers of players, right? You have your whale, and then you kind of work from there. And all of those individuals, while all getting quality engagement and service, it was differentiated, based on the value or the quality of that particular customer or player. And so, you would get everything from the full meal deal, all the way to just sort of your welcome email, a basic recommended itinerary. And so I think it becomes sort of those nuanced pieces that are sort of the surprise and delight that people would normally think about or wouldn't expect you to be thinking about. And so I took a few tips from that, or at least my mindset from how they manage those candidates. I mean, a more basic, not these days, but a more basic example of that is the tiers on an airline from first class to coach. That's actually, I think, diminished a lot more over the years, but I don't think there's anything wrong with, treating different candidates according to what is important and will have the most impact on them.
Mm-hmm. And so in regards to thinking outside the box, I just see it more as being creative and problem solving. Whenever you have a client or a candidate and you have an issue, you have to think of all the options and the best way to solve a problem. And of course, you're always going to look at in every option that you have, and it's not always going to be the straight line or the obvious option that's going to be there. So I think for a long time, most of us have always thought outside the box because we're not this is the way it is and that's that type of people, because otherwise we wouldn't be recruiters. So,
you know what, though, I've had candidates complain to me, one who's, a high level friend of mine who was, one of the managing marketing people at Yelp. And he said to me recently, he finds it frustrating when recruiters, and he feels like it could be because they're more junior, if the recruiters will not submit him for jobs if he does not check off every single box. Meanwhile, he has more to offer than those boxes. He just might be missing one or two of those things. And he said he's getting frustrated working with recruiters for reasons like that. So some, not all of them think outside the box. I think the more experienced ones may, but the newer ones, they don't. I think they're scared. They're scared to, push a client maybe a little bit to see if a client will offer more money or if a client would consider somebody at a higher level when it's a lower level job. But this guy is brilliant. I mean, he's really brilliant. And he was right when he said to me, I don't want to work with this guy anymore. He just won't submit me for the job because I'm missing a couple things.
Mm-hmm. I have to agree that I think more junior level recruiters, and this isn't necessarily a knock on agency, but a lot of agency style recruiters, they are very black and white, check all the boxes or else. So they do give a lot of us a bad reputation. So I feel like a lot of times I am in an uphill battle when I'm trying to reach a really niche market. And they're like, I get emails from recruiters all the time. Why am I going to respond to yours? Like, what makes you different? So that's part of the thinking outside of the box, knowing your competition in the market and why somebody would want to reply to your email. Oh, I found your profile. Want to chat? It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you have to get out from behind the computer, people where they are. So a lot of ways that we think outside of the box, or I personally think outside of the box, and conveniently, because I'm in the DC area, there are a lot of conferences that come to town. I mean, with the exception of the last 2 months, like I get out from behind the computer all the time. I network with local universities. I network with meetup groups. Sometimes I'll go to just the happy hour after a conference to just hang out where those developers are hanging out. But even if you dial that back outside of the tech industry, say it's an industry that doesn't do conferences or things like that, or you're in a remote place where those conferences aren't taking place. One success story that I have from much earlier in my career when I was doing light industrial type of work along with that welder, we posted ads in the newspaper, like the print version of the newspaper, to get the right people to apply. And we also would put up those stupid little signs with the tear off tabs, like at bars and stuff, where we knew those types of people would be.
Right.
And we were able to fill the jobs that way. So yeah, there's never gonna be a one size fits all way to do our job. And that's one of the reasons I love our job. Because I'm not doing the same thing every day. I'm not looking for the same person in the same place with the same skill.
Hey, Sean, I'll offer a out of the box thing that we did and continue to do is we were trying to leverage some of our more senior leaders across the organization to participate in closing calls. And obviously they're never.
Craig's frozen for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now you're back.
Oh, now you're back.
You're back now.
To do that at scale, we did what we called closing conference calls. And so for any recruiter who had a candidate that had received an offer, verbally or otherwise, we would invite them to the closing calls. And we would have at least 2 senior leaders, usually someone who was a leader, sort of a VP level or above, and then we'd have someone at the functional level. So in our case in tech, say, a senior manager of engineering as an example, partnering to basically talk about why Uber, right? And so we would get individuals who would register to attend this event. Of course, their attendance is anonymous, but they can listen in on the call, and they would receive sort of directly from these individuals sort of answers as to why Uber and why Uber now, some of the things they should be considering and thinking about, as well as we would open it up to some Q&A. We do a Slido either in advance or leave some amount of time for Q&A. So that way, we could reach a broader audience of candidates, address, a lot of questions at once and in one setting that we knew we were going to be getting from every single candidate. So everyone could hear it at once. They can hear it in the same voice. They can all be aligned, and also get a number of questions asked and answered that they might not have actually thought about. And then, of course, the recruiter would do the follow-up and add a little bit of extra flavor to that as appropriate. So that's a very specific thing that is out of the box. And we kind of modeled that after, sort of the, earnings or revenue calls that finance does, on a quarterly basis.
Interesting. I've never heard of that before. You had multiple.
Yeah, very, very effective. Yeah. Very effective. I mean, we could have up to, we try to keep it manageable, but it could be up to 20 candidates, right? From all different scenarios, certainly trying to keep it in the right context, but very effective, good feedback on it, really set the recruiters up for success in the follow-up calls. And they got a chance to connect with real people that they might not have otherwise connected with at those senior levels.
Interesting. And anything left to add on outside the box thinking on that one? All right, Krystan, we're going to jump over to you.
Okay, wonderful. And always multitasking, life of a recruiter, right? Sorry about that. I'm going to leave that alone for a minute. So what I wanted to bring to the table, and I think we've all touched on it without using this specific terminology, is the human element of recruiting. We're all people, but helping your hiring managers understand the types of people that you're going to be finding for them and building the trusted relationship with the hiring manager, as well as building those trusted relationships with the candidates, it will come full circle. But now more than ever, I mean, and some industries are affected much differently than others, but where I am in the tech space, in the cleared space, in the DC market, I already had borderline negative unemployment. Now, these people are still employed and even less likely to make a move because they want to keep the stability of their current job for their family situation. So I have a new problem that I've never had to solve before. My hiring managers are like, Krystan, you should have no problem finding this person for me. This technology's existed. And I was like, whoa, Mr. Hiring Manager, like, I never said that I couldn't find them. I said, they're not answering me. So right now, I like the what's in it for me approach. Put yourself in the candidate's shoes and think, why do I want to make this move? I saw in the comments or in the chat box, somebody had mentioned the 80-20 rule. If you're right, if they meet 100% of the qualifications and they're already doing that, what's the incentive to move besides perhaps a bigger paycheck or a different industry? So yeah, play to what's important to that candidate. Salary is not always the reason somebody wants to move. Sometimes they want more work-life flexibility or a bigger PTO package or more of a 401k retirement type of investment. It really just depends on who they are, what they've got going on outside of work. And there are a lot of other factors that we can't or really aren't supposed to know about from a personal life perspective that sometimes candidates will offer that, or you can hear between the lines when they're telling you about their passions, what your company can do to contribute to that. So one of the things that I do for NetImpact strategies, I came in to a very small organization that was about to blow up. We've doubled in size in the last year and a half, and we're just hitting 300 employees right now. So company culture and our core values are at the heart of what we do. So when somebody says, oh, I want some more work-life balance because I volunteer on these 2 days of the week for this organization, I can tell them not only how we also do that, but that they can also bring that piece of their life into work, and we can make a work-related version of that they can spearhead. So they can help the company get together. They can contribute beyond just the black and white of the job description. Painting that bigger picture for their career, not just solving today's problem, but the bigger scope, I think really helps seal the deal, because then the rest of their conversations can be more focused on the job and the project when they're talking with the project managers or their potential colleagues. But I handle like the more corporate culture, and even though I'm not going to see them because I work in our HQ office, they're going to be on a client site somewhere, they still know how they tie into the overall organization. That's not necessarily something that anybody else in the process is going to share with them. So valuing the candidate's time, but also making sure to contribute the details that will pull on their heartstrings, follow their passions, especially in the technical space with the technologies always evolving. And I'm sure this is similar to other industries too, whether it be a new tattoo gun version or a new guitar or a new drum set. You have to stay up on top of what's changing in your industry. So it's very hard to convince somebody to take a job if it's going backwards in what their version of the technology is. So I don't always call candidates and just jump right in and say, I saw your profile, this is how you fit into our project. I always start by saying, tell me about you. I want to learn what it is that's right for you and why you're on the job market and what you're looking for the next step of your career. Then if that makes sense, I'll explain how that fits into our project. So I am wildly successful with that approach, even with more junior level or entry level type of people, because even more so nowadays, millennials and the next generation of new employees, they are very focused on what's important to them. They are more likely to take a lower paying that aligns with their morals than they are to take a job just because it pays the right amount. And that's not always been the case. So just listen and read between the lines, or hear between the lines, I guess. That's one of my biggest pieces of advice to anybody who is trying to continue to think outside the box, do something different.
Let me ask you this, Krystan. So that's like a great mindset to have, right? To bring people in this understanding, listening, and engagement way. And this probably has nothing to do with your role or anybody's role in recruiting. But do you see, and this may have a better chance to get accomplished at a smaller size company versus a larger, but all that enthusiasm and listening and understanding that you had bringing them on, does that carry over into the company? And are you part of that, or how do we keep that rolling?
I think you have a good point there with the size of the company definitely having an impact there. I have been part of very, very large organizations, like over 60,000 people in the US in that company, where, yeah, I mean, you kind of feel like a number and you can get people excited on the front end, but then you trust that it's carried through because of the company culture, the brand culture, whatever the case. In a smaller organization, I know all of my leadership. So they trust me to be the cheerleader from the beginning and see it through. And then I trust them because we get to work together all the time. I have meetings with my entire executive panel once a week, virtually, mind you, even beforehand. But I'm checking in with them every week. Who needs help in what areas, whether it's talent acquisition or if it's resource planning and like moving resources amongst our projects, making sure they're staying in touch with their team to know who is ready for the next step of their career and what that could do. So of course, my role is tied more into bringing talent in and then helping that talent be guided through their career so they're not leaving them for the next step, but we're helping them groom. So I work very close with our HR team in terms of internal training and development programs, whether they're external people we bring in to do certifications or like a PMP boot camp, or if it's just getting people to the next level of Excel, Microsoft Excel, advanced tools. We have so many in-house experts that our employees love getting together and putting those trainings together and then teaching a group of other employees that they don't normally get to see. So I think there is a point to being in a smaller organization, which is why I prefer this size company, that like 100 to 500 range. That some details do tend to get lost by accident. It's not ever done on purpose. It's just the growth scale of things. But additionally, through COVID, I'm sure your companies as well as mine, HR is trying to do things, excuse me, to keep morale up. And what I found, it's my protein shake. I'm sorry. God, I took a sip at the wrong time. That is not COVID related. I have not been sick, thankfully, knock on wood. So, but in terms of keeping employee morale up and making sure the teams still feel connected, HR has some very straightforward initiatives on how they've been doing that, and leadership have sent out all staff emails and things like that. But I think it's the organic stuff that has the even bigger impact. So I was not tasked with doing any of those things, but because the majority of employees know who I am because I'm their gate to getting into the company, I've been playing with Microsoft Teams games and different communications and been hosting virtual happy hours on Friday afternoons that nobody asked me to do, but everybody is so thrilled to be a part of. So I think thinking outside of the box as a recruiter and as a steward of the company's emotion and excitement, it's just something that I've always taken on, that I'm the face. I represent us. How do we want to be perceived? Externally or internally? They should mirror each other.
Excellent. Katherine, were you going to add something?
Yes, so thank you, Krystan. And the human element definitely is something that makes a recruiter really stand out. But what I wanted to say is definitely I was fortunate with my mentor from the very beginning uh, to learn when evaluating a candidate to really listen as well and find out what the main criteria is. What exactly are the top, the 4 or 5 most important things you're looking for in your next ideal company and or position, and find out what those things are and see how they match into what your organization's core values are. And one of the things right now that's really big that companies are talking about is, what are, the core values are so important right now. And as an organization looking at retention, how do you attract the best people and how do you keep them? It's those core values that are, that are what keeps an organization. What are the core values and how do you make sure that as an organization that, those are being taught and listened to, I've been listening to and watching a couple webinars in different organizations or councils on that. And it's a really big thing right now, I think, with COVID and trying to retain good employees. But I totally agree with you, Krystan, on, it's really important, that human factor. And people don't leave companies because of, they're not motivated purely by money. It's those other tangible or not tangible things. It's those other things, whether it's, again, with millennials, it's a lot of the work-life balance or other factors. And those are what you really have to listen for and make sure you're making that match and pulling those things when it comes to closing a candidate on an offer. You got to pull those things, listen to those things. And
pull that back.
And when interviewing a candidate, it's the performance-based, finding out what they excel at in the performance-based hiring. How are they going to, what type of challenges do you have in that position? Is it going to match what they're looking for? So it's all that human elements and what you have to offer and try to match those up. So that's what I wanted to contribute.
Yeah, Craig, I'm going to sort of jump over to you. That I think the human element or human factor is a nice segue to your item that you had.
Yeah. So, if we are assuming, recruiters that are average, to best or, good to great, and I had to pick one thing, it would be someone who is a very skilled relationship manager. A relationship manager between candidates and hiring managers. I think that intermediary role, that brokering role, if you will, is super critical. And again, all the table stakes and basics aside, I think this is the glue to most things that we would define as successful in recruiting. I think in that relationship, there are 3 anchors, frankly, and I sort of with my team try to set structure or set the table and kind of let them run with it. So the way I've talked about it is sort of in this language of ethos, which is the credibility and ethics, logos, which is logic and reasoning, and pathos, which is the emotions and feelings. Because I feel like, when we talk about ethos, that's really bottom line trust. And if you don't have the trust or the credibility out of the gate, like you're dead in the water, whether it's the candidate or whether it's the hiring manager. So being very intentional about what kind of credibility you're bringing to an engagement or to a relationship up front. And that's not always like knowing everything. Sometimes it's coming with very curious and intellectually honest questions up front that might unlock a different way of thinking for a candidate and or a hiring manager. So it's not, running your resume to the candidate or the hiring manager. Sometimes it is simply having really well thought out questions that's going to get us all to sort of that shared objective. On the logo side, you got logic and reason. In my world, and it goes beyond this, but certainly when you're dealing with engineers, they're completely wired in their DNA to think logic. If this, then that. 0, 1, right? And so they want to make sure that the information that's being presented to them, whether it's the role, the team, the organization, the comp, has logic and it makes sense. And so you do have to be very clear in how you prepare that. And the same thing with the hiring manager, you got to be clear about how you're presenting the candidate with that logic of connecting the dots between what they want and what this candidate brings. And I think lastly, the pathos, the emotions and feelings, I think that is sort of the wrapper around all of this, which kind of closes it. And I think typically recruiters are very good and very comfortable about that. Like I speak very enthusiastically and I can bring energy to this and, you know, I'm going to be a cheerleader and an advocate. Like, I don't think that's a difficult thing for us in the recruiting community. But if you over-index on that, you know, candidates and hiring managers become skeptical because they think you're sort of trying to shade something or override a lack of knowledge or a lack of credibility with a lot of words and a lot of energy. And so those three things, all critical. I think a recruiter who can identify and broker the alignment of those relationship anchors between candidates and hiring manager is the true differentiator between a good recruiter and a great recruiter. And in most tactical things, you could probably, you know, sort of nest under one of those, whether it's the offer, whether it's the process, whether it's the experience. But what this does is it allows, I think, recruiters to kind of frame their approach. And until they become very adept and it becomes just sort of second language or automatic thinking, it's just a good way to revisit and sort of set the table for yourself and set the table for the relationship that you're managing.
I agree with a lot, you know, of what you just said. I mean, listen, we're not car salesmen. We've got to believe in the companies that we're working for, the companies that we're representing. When, you know, you've got to be confident and you, like Krystan, I mean, you come across as someone who does really enjoy your company and like your company and believe in it. So as a candidate coming in, you can tell that. Otherwise, it does come off as too salesy. I know sometimes people think recruiters can be pushy or they're trying to convince them.
Right.
There are recruiters out there who are like that, but that doesn't make them good or even great. That makes them trying to push the deal, get a commission. I mean, I had someone say to me just the other day, you know, when I submitted him for a job that was 150,000 and now he wants 190, and he said to me, the more money I get, the more money you'll get. That's not appealing to me. You know what I'm saying? I want to do right by him, but I also want to do right by the client. But that's not going to be the motivation for me to get him more money. You know, it's got to be for the right reason. That's not the right reason.
Yeah, I think all of these, I think the challenge, right, in these anchors is the alignment, right? Because if at any point in time the hiring manager has a different priority or objective than the candidate, there's always going to be a potential misfire. So if the hiring manager is all sort of logic and reasoning and the candidate feels like that's been addressed and they're all about how this opportunity makes them feel, like you have to be the broker in between those two things. Neither of those things are wrong. They're just different, you know. But if they're wildly different, and if all three of those things are misaligned, that's likely going to end up, you know, in a no offer or a decline, right? And that's okay too, because in the end, if you are still able to say, look, I was clear on one, I was clear on two, I was clear on three, and now I'm also clear about why this didn't work out, I think that's okay. We're not going to win every game in this, but I think trying to identify and be the balance, to occupy the space between, the difference between how the hiring manager might be thinking and the candidate might be thinking. And in fact, sometimes move them to a different place across those anchors is a whole other level of sort of influence that a recruiter may or may not have. But I agree. I think we sometimes default to the emotion and feeling because that's where we're most comfortable. But the best have them all. They can do them all. They can meet the candidate where they are. They can meet the hiring manager where they are. They can influence the balance and the alignment across all those things.
So let me ask a question to the group. And Craig, you just said they have them all or they don't. And this sort of goes for all traits. Let's say I don't have a trait, but I sure want it. Krystan's energy and motivation. I'm more mellow and laid back. Do I just need to drink more coffee to get to her level? What are some ways where
Yeah, I mean, 2 cups today, guys.
Oh yeah. So
this is a low day for me.
In that example, Sean, I think so let's just say your example is the case. I feel like, to the other point, if you can't find sort of excitement and energy about the organization that you're representing or the role that you're representing, then I think you have a bigger problem as to whether you're in the right business. And I'm not saying you have to be overly extroverted, but you definitely have to find some energy about what you're representing in terms of the end game, right? Because your goal is to bring a talented individual into the organization. And so even if it's just that, even if you're like, ooh, I can, your energy might not be the same as Krystan's, but you may say, hey, I can find energy more than my baseline energy around getting this person across the finish line, then find that. I don't think everybody has to be, Tony Robbins. But I also think people can't, be engaging people as if they're asleep either.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Krystan?
So to add to that, I was going to say something very similar. Not all energy has to look and feel the same way. As long as it's kinetic, you're creating a buildup to get that candidate more excited about doing their job for your company. They need to get that through your communication. Now, can they tell when you're smiling on the other end of the phone? I think absolutely. So if you're having a bad day, the candidate hears that in your voice. But I think that those should be few and far between for us because of the type of role we're in. You're only in it because this is what you want to do. You want to be that spokesperson for your company. You want to help the company grow. So whether you are a former all-star cheerleader, which I am, but that has what I do. I've just always brought this much excitement to anything that I'm passionate about. Now, could I make more money doing my same job with less work, with fewer direct reports at a big name company working with 30,000 people? Absolutely. I choose at this level for a smaller company because that's where my passion is. And I mean, don't get me, I'm paid appropriately, but to your point, Pam, the candidate that's like, oh, initially I'm fine with 150, but now I want 190 because it's about the dollars. If I was about the dollars, I would be in a very, very different spot.
Right.
Probably even in a different part of the country.
It's an interesting consideration though, Sean, because, can a great recruiter also be an introvert?
Yes.
Right? And what comes with introversion is that they're not as moved or motivated, right, about being as outgoing. And sometimes they're not as motivated when it comes to, say, an audience, kind of a one to few or one to many. Maybe one to one, they're fine. Or maybe even in one to one, they just want to state the facts, right? I don't have any more energy for you because, I struggle with that personally, right? I think we have to provide coaching in the spirit of being inclusive, right, we have to provide some level of coaching to help that individual find their energy. And again, I'm not saying on a Tony Robbins level, but I think you certainly have to find a level of energy that's at least a half or a click above maybe where your candidate is, right? And again, if I speak specifically about engineers, you can imagine like we're engaging an audience of people who sometimes they're just like, look, I got nothing for you, all facts, and sometimes that works, but then on the other hand, you do have to connect them to some emotion, because even as factual and as logical as engineers are, at least in my case, they still find emotion around the mission, right, of the company and what the impact is. And that's where oftentimes we have to go. And so even if you're introverted and you're able to articulate that, that's at least a step beyond where your default might be. So it just requires a little bit of coaching, in my opinion.
Interesting. And anybody else want to have anything to add to that?
I mean, I'll add one thing. I do feel like, Craig, sometimes if human resources professionals are the ones who are doing the recruiting, it's a part of their job, but it's not something that they always can relate to the way a recruiter can relate to that. They don't know how to, like Krystan, in some ways, sell the opportunity, recruit from the heart. That's how I used to say it when I was an in-house recruiter. I believed in the company I was working with. I used to say I would recruit from the heart. I loved the company, and it came across in when I was meeting with people. And I don't, there's a fine line with the introvert. Not all HR people are introverts. I'm not trying to say that, but sometimes I don't think they enjoy that part of their job. And it can come across.
Yeah.
Right. Agreed.
I've definitely seen that.
Yep.
So I always joke that talent acquisition is the fun part of HR.
I think
Very, very different personality types.
Yeah.
I think that there are some other HR people who are really good at recruiting and enjoy it, but I think recruiters we're extremely passionate about what we do, and that's why we do it. And so, so be it.
Yeah.
So kind of following up to my question, do you think for the people that have been in the game, right? Let's say 10 years plus, right? In corporate recruiting or any type of recruiting, really, they have those traits, basically just a matter of survival. And those that don't, kind of attrition off and went and found Craig, to your point, went and found a new career better suited for them. But for the ones that are in it, because it is sort of, especially in corporate recruiting, when it's not, money based, like a
right
third party would be, hey, you really got to like this stuff. And there's a lot of no's, yes, no, yes, type situation. So that passion for it, not controlling. Go ahead.
I feel like your statement is accurate for corporate recruiting. I'm going to go out on a limb and say when it comes to agency style recruitment, staffing firm where they are very metrics focused, a lot of the people that stay there are because they're just wildly successful, pushy salespeople. So they might just be like, this is my product. My product is moving resumes. So I think that the wrong people stay for the wrong reasons beyond that time frame. But generally speaking, if you're going to go corporate in-house and grow your career that way, yeah, you're not lasting 10 years in recruiting unless you're passionate about it.
Yeah, unless you've been really good at hiding in the seams.
Right. If
And
you've
nobody
been
has raised the
behind
bar
a team, yeah. If you've been behind a team that's much stronger than you are and you can ride on coattails,
yeah, right.
happening as well. So it's not that it doesn't happen, but majority of people that have opted
for that long,
career, I would even say it's probably about the 7-year mark where the attrition drops greatly. Either like, I don't want to do this ever again, or let's keep going.
I mean, not every hiring manager, in-house is going to be easy to deal with. But if the company itself is a good company to work with, and the majority of the people respect recruiters and, you know, their process, then it's okay. You know, like when you said the no, there's always going to be those people who are, you know, going to give you a little bit of pushback. But again, if you believe in the company, and even on the agency side, which I am, you're right. Some of them are just about pushing resumes. I don't feel like they last long.
Right.
Because they don't get a good reputation for themselves.
And I don't say anything to knock agency.
Right.
I started my career, my second full-time recruiting job was in an agency. I was actually with the Manpower Group, but I was in a very rural part of the country. So that's where I got a lot of my light industrial recruitment experience. But some of our clients were amazing. And I still talk to them 15 years later. Like, I'm friends with one of my project managers from one of my clients there. So it's all about the passion and believing in the companies that you're supporting, right. Even
yes.
if it is on a client basis in an agency style recruitment. You still have to believe in what you're working to help.
Absolutely, and that's what I typed. You have to live with yourself at the end of the day, knowing that you helped place somebody in a position with a company that's the right fit for them. I mean,
Yep.
it's not ultimately my decision, it's theirs, but you need to know that you didn't put them in a situation that's with a bad company, or they don't treat people nicely or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was agency, I would turn down new contracts. I didn't think that those operations were in alignment with the agency's core values.
Right, absolutely.
Ethics honestly have come into play a couple times as well. So yeah. It's all about being able to rest well at night and that you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think ultimately it does come back to that the love of the job, regardless of where you are, if you're in it for a while. I'm still waiting for somebody, maybe Netflix will do it, to make some type of sitcom out of a recruiting team. Because I just think there's always a story to tell.
Oh, yeah.
Each day is a little bit different.
Yeah.
My team alone,
Yeah.
there's only 3 of us. We have stories almost every day of stuff that keeps us off guard. Candidates never cease to amaze me, and hiring managers will never cease to amaze me.
No, but at least it keeps us laughing.
Yeah, exactly.
It does.
It's fun to
I
be
do
in
a
a
lot
team.
of these. Like, what?
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I promised not to go past the 45-minute mark. Apologies for that little lie there, because we went almost a full hour. Another, again, great conversation. So I appreciate everybody's time and staying on board. I was watching sort of the attendees. We lost a couple, but not too many after we went way over. So again, thank you for everybody for attending. I will give a last, any final comments or anything like that? Anybody want to add anything? All right.
Connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not already.
Yes.
Yeah, I will make a recording. I'll post it up on LinkedIn and send everybody out the link. I'll also, I think Pam, you brought it up, or maybe it was Catherine, the input that the attendees put in with their items, what they thought made a great recruiter. I'll put that on so everybody can see what they had, and then we'll take it from there. So with that said, have a great day and great end of the week, everybody. And thanks again for coming here and talk recruiting.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting it
Bye-bye.
together. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.